Good morning, everyone. This is Deborah Pruitt at John Burton Advocates for Youth. This is our College and Career Transition Technical Assistance call for June. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Welcome. It's a small group today, so I'm hoping that we can have some discussion. I'm always hoping for that, and remind you that when you look at your control panel, which you should see on your screen, you can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on the control panel, and I can call on you, which means I can unmute you, and you can share your wisdom or ask your question. And also you can post a question in the question panel, and I'll be watching that to see if anybody has a question that you want to answer. But it's a small group of us this morning, so let's talk. And but I'm going to start with a few things that that I thought would be helpful to cover and review. So I know there are some people on the call that were at the meeting we held May 30th in Oakland, and some people who are here that were not at the meeting that we held in Oakland. So I want to kind of do a quick review and then hopefully draw out those of you who were at the meeting, maybe some perspectives on what you gained from that. But first I wanted to start with the matriculation update, which we did not cover at the meeting, and I just wanted to share a few things that would be maybe helpful to know as you're working with your district staff and your community partners about what's happening at the community colleges around matriculation. So with that, I'll jump in there. So as you may know, if not, let me be the first to give you the news. The process of matriculation, and in particular the assessment and placement process in core math and English courses, is changing dramatically in the community college system this year and over the next year. Well, it will continue to evolve, but this is a big change which opens new opportunities, especially for foster youth and the various students who are coming into college maybe with a little less preparation or sort of less up-to-date skills that will help them to proceed faster. As a lot of you know by listening to us, let me go back and say, following the research, we at JBay are very keen on helping students avoid what we call the matriculation, the remediation trap. And it's not our idea, it's what we've adopted from folks who work in the field and are doing research on the process of assessing students on their skill level and then placing them in remedial classes to get them up to, quote, college level or transfer level abilities. So last year, the bill AB 705 was passed, which requires the community colleges to use what's called multiple measures assessment. This is good news, because what it means is they have to use, at minimum, the high school transcript to help identify students' skill level and place them in the appropriate level of math and English and ESL classes. So what's been happening in the past, where students could be placed anywhere from 3 to 4 levels below a course that actually earns college credit. And as you can imagine, it's incredibly demoralizing, discouraging. It could be 2 to 3 years that they're taking classes without even earning college credit. It means using up financial aid. Most of the students who fall into those classes never complete. It's like a percentage of maybe 6% who actually go on and get into transfer level work and move on. What's been learned in the research is that the assessment test that students have been required to take for placement actually does not sufficiently assess their abilities, and so they're being placed below their level of capabilities and therefore being stunted, blocked, limited in their ability to progress. So a couple of months ago, the Chancellor's Office did release guidelines that require full implementation of this AB 705 statute by fall of 2019. So the colleges are having to quickly work on curriculum changes that provide accelerated remediation, in addition to actually using high school transcript to place students in their courses. So the colleges are quickly, and surprisingly quickly, I have to say, responding to this. and working on curriculum so that they, instead of 3 to 4 levels of remediation in math and English, I think GSL sometimes has even more. The math and English class remedial steps are 1 to 2 levels at most, but generally 1 with a lot of extra support or different structure of coursework that helps the student get up to speed quickly. So the formal regulations will be coming soon, but the Chancellor has already offered these guidelines, and the campuses are quickly adapting, and that's what I wanted to make sure you know about, to make sure your counselors know about this, all of the folks who work with students, that they understand that they can help the students do better by getting in the right placement. It is a variable landscape, so if you work with multiple colleges or you send students to multiple colleges, it may vary quite a bit from one college to another on how quickly they're getting up to speed. But I just wanted to show you a little clip of the research that does confirm that cumulative high school GPA in math and English actually is the best assessment or predictor of college level success. But multiple measures would include all of these factors, and many campuses are adopting this more sophisticated and holistic view of assessment and working on implementing that so that students get a fair reading on their ability and get placed well. Some things to know and spread about how to help students avoid remedial traps, because some colleges may not be as quick to advance in this way as others. So the thing to know is make sure that the student can obtain their high school transcript. So that's one of the bureaucratic procedures that sometimes can trip students up. So they need to be able to provide their high school transcript to the college, and encourage them to take math and English in their senior year. So when you're thinking about how to guide educational planning in your county, this is a really important piece. It's making sure that students are taking math and English right up to graduation, because it helps keep them fresh and strong in those skills so that when they do take an assessment test, or it helps, they'll do well, or it helps to improve their GPA and their sort of transcript data about their abilities in math and English. When they do reach the college and if they have options, and this is to find out at each college if they have options about on co-requisite or what's called an accelerated remedial track, take those wherever available. Encourage the students, even if they feel insecure, that they'll do better if they do that. That's what all the data show. And the folks I work with in the colleges that work in this area see it all the time, every semester. So the advice we like to give for the students is to be sure they work with a counselor, a good counselor, to determine the best accelerated remediation option. The foster youth programs at the colleges are going to be much more familiar with what's available and helping the student assess what's really the right option for them if there are multiple options. Sometimes what they mean by accelerated remediation is a college level course that also has a support course with it, or really robust kind of tutoring. And sometimes it's taking the transfer level course while taking a supplemental sort of developmental course. So there are ways that students can really get up to speed, and if they're being challenged in a meaningful way and supported, then it's, of course, hugely valuable for their development. The second point here is explore options for completing remediation in one semester, not 2 or more. Sometimes accelerated remediation means a 6-unit course where they're very intensively, covering the math to get to the transfer level. Be sure that when there is a choice, that they take integrated reading and writing courses instead of separate courses in each area. The folks I know, the experts in this field, cannot understand why reading and writing was ever split. So don't go study reading and then study writing. It should be an integrated course. And if they have the option, take pre-statistics courses instead of multiple algebra courses. And this is actually one of the reforms that's happening in math in general, is often options for students who are not going into a STEM field, that they can take a sort of non-STEM math courses that help them to achieve the math requirement, but without the deeper levels that are necessary for STEM majors. And where they are, where they can, take co-requisite options where the student can begin directly in a college level course with extra support. And that's what I was referring to a minute ago. Students do really well in those situations. So the key here is, the bottom line is, don't be afraid to accelerate. And a lot of students feel nervous, especially if they've had interrupted schooling during high school. You know, they may feel like they feel insecure about math or their writing abilities and so forth. But the data show clearly that students are much better off if they avoid taking multiple remedial classes. Now, in the next year or two, there are going to be fewer options for multiple remedial classes because of the reform. There will be better support, supplemental support, accelerated support. So this won't be as much of a difficulty for students because they won't really have the option, you know, going the slow path that a lot of them were forced into, or some students might think they would do better in. The fact is, they don't do better that way. So as the landscape is changing, just make sure that the students have this information and go ahead and stretch and get the extra support that's needed, working with the support systems on the campus. If students are in a remedial class, just quickly make sure that, oh, I already really covered this. I'm sorry, I went back. I wanted to mention that if you're looking at college websites, this is not at all clear. In most cases, the college websites are not very current. They've not really integrated this new approach. Saddleback College, I put up here as an example of a website that does update. It was updated in April, so it's updated including this AB 705 requirement, and it tells students to be sure to bring a high school transcript. It also, you know, many of the colleges are still going to have them taking assessment tests. So all the best practices about reminding them to prepare for it, do practice tests, sleep the night before, you know, eat breakfast, do all the things that help you do well on tests are important still. But it's not the only, their future doesn't ride just on that test, so they will need to bring a transcript. And not every website is going to indicate this. So the next one shows an example of a college that doesn't say anything about bringing a transcript. It doesn't really say, if you click in, I even looked, I didn't say who this is because I don't want to call out, you know, I don't want to criticize the college. But mainly it's an issue of not having the resources to have staff to update the website sufficiently. Because I happen to know this college in particular is doing really good things in assessment and remediation reform. So don't rely on the website, is all I'm saying. And don't let the students rely on the website. Make sure that there's a personal connection with the liaison, or the Guardian Scholars Foster Youth Program on campus to help make sure they navigate this in the best way possible. It's a huge, huge factor in succeeding through college. We did produce a handout to help students and support staff know what to know, what they need to know, and what to ask, and how to help students. So this handout was one I put in the packets at the meeting in May. So if you were there, you got it. If not, it's on the resource page. The California College Pathways.org/FYSCP-resources, and I have that link on the slide coming up. So you can download this, print it, hand it around. It's a really helpful guide to a lot of the things I just said, and is relevant particularly now, and hopefully will be increasingly less relevant as the reforms are really solid across the state. Just another thing about matriculation I wanted to touch on is that, you know, this extra step for foster youth in the matriculation process, which starts with orientation. Everyone has to take one. Sometimes it's online, sometimes it's in person, sometimes it has to be scheduled, often it's just show up, but that has to happen. And then the assessment process, which I was just talking about that, and then meeting with a counselor to develop an education plan. And then foster youth have to verify their status as foster youth for all the extra benefits that they now get. So it's important to know a couple of things. This is what leads to foster youth guaranteed access to priority registration, which can make a huge difference in their ability to schedule their lives so that it works for them to succeed in college and get the classes they need in the sequence they need to move through quickly. This is a verification that occurs in admissions and records. The financial aid, when they get a verification in financial aid, it may or may not be shared with admissions and records for this priority registration. Most of the colleges are pretty good about sharing that information. It's sort of a simple one verification, and then both departments have access to it. But not all colleges are doing that. So just, again, another thing to know and to help maybe nudge at the college. But it's really important, two things here to know, that you should always have their verification letter, because there are various ways that they may need it, and how much better just to have it than to have to go through weeks of trying to get it and then have other fallout from that, like missing the priority registration deadline. Also, the key here is to start early, and I think a lot of students in particular may not really appreciate how early the process begins for registering for the next semester. So registrations opened in May for fall semester. A lot of students aren't thinking about that when they're graduating high school. So get them in this process early. Along with this, I wanted to point out the slides got out of order. I'm missing one. Sorry. Okay. That on this verification point, there is a bill, SB 12, that we helped to get signed last year, which does allow for automatic verification of foster youth status between CDSS and CSAC. So Child Welfare is going to provide verification of foster youth status to California Student Aid Commission. So for financial aid purposes, they will no longer have to provide their verification letter. But again, for priority registration, they may still have to do that. And sometimes for other programs, other scholarships and things like that, they'll need to provide a verification letter. So it's still really important that they get that. I also wanted to make sure everyone knows that the provision in SB 12 that allowed for an expansion of the KFES, or called now Next Up program, was achieved, and that we now have Butte Glen Community College District, Los Rios, Kern District, Chaffee, Riverside, and San Diego districts all have the KFES Next Up program. So you're probably aware of that, but if not, it's exciting because now it's 20 districts, and I think it's 53 colleges across the state. So there are really strong options for foster youth and in those areas, and probably one worth even traveling to if possible. Obviously, that's not always possible, but it makes a huge difference to have strong support. And it's not only the KFES Next Up programs that are strong. You know, there are others, such as at Shasta College and the one that existed at Butte before they got the KFES program. Oh, Shasta is a KFES program. It just makes such a difference because they have such a strong stream of funds to support the students directly. I think I'm going to skip this, but leave this in the slides that are available on the resource page on our website so that you can access them if you need to. Now, what we did at the meeting in Oakland, I'm going to try to briefly recap in hope that the folks of you who were at that meeting can share anything that you thought was extremely helpful or worth noting, or anything that you want more information about. I'm always trying to respond to what's helpful to you, so it's good to hear what that looks like. So what I found working with a lot of the counties is this, well, with students all over, is that this transitioning from high school is really about, transitioning into your life path. And most of the students in foster youth status are most especially concerned with income and stability, obviously. And the challenge is to help them see the role that education and training, further training, can make in actually establishing a career path rather than being stuck in low-level jobs that do not provide a pathway to, a sustainable and satisfying life. So the avenue that's often the most practical and pathway opening for these youth is career education. And it became clear to me in the last 2 years, that what's happening with career education in the community colleges, which is pretty remarkable and positive and helpful for youth, is not widely known and appreciated. And so there's sort of a transformation happening that means that what's available in this area is so far beyond most people's idea of career education, or CTE, career technical education, that they tend to think of as this sort of vocational track that's for people who can't do better. They're missing the boat. So the idea at the meeting, and again now and over again, is trying to help everyone appreciate and help you all, help your district staff really appreciate how robust a lot of this career education is already, and how much more robust it will be in the next few years. It's been a huge initiative through the chancellor, through the community college system, to update, revamp, and expand career education at the colleges. We had Marie Amboy from Peralta Community College District talk about this and the broad strokes of what these pathways look like. But to start with the facts, which is, and I've collated, I've culled slides from the presentations that we had that day, because we certainly don't have time to do all that they did. And I'm not the expert here, so I'm trying to sort of reproduce some of the highlights from them. I'm hoping to do a webinar. Well, I'll tell you about that later. But the labor market is increasingly demanding a more skilled workforce. And so already more than half of jobs require more than high school education, and by 2020 it's projected at least 65% of jobs will require some post-secondary education or training. Not always a four-year degree. Sometimes it's more practical training, which is where career education steps in. What the career education specialists have recognized is that California needs 1 million more AA certificates, or career education certificates, or industry value credentials of some sort than are currently being produced. So we've got this huge gap between the workforce needs and what is actually, what students are actually getting, either not getting any post-secondary training or maybe not targeted enough. So the work right now in the career education and the community college system is to make sure that the knowledge of the workforce needs by region is matched to what the community colleges are providing in their certificates and programs. And so what we have, the challenge we have ahead of us, is overcoming the barriers that foster youth might face and helping them make the connection between real jobs that are sitting out there without people to fill them and where they are now. And we know that many of them may not get the career guidance that they deserve, partly from changing schools and changing counties, not being served in the way that they need. Doubts about abilities to succeed in college. They often hear they're not going to be able to go to college. That's ridiculous. Uneven, and of course worries about money for college. They may not even understand that the community college has these programs and what they could mean to them. And maybe their high school experience was so uneven that they don't feel like they've got the background to be able to go to, quote, college. How could they possibly? And of course, they need that income and need to know that they're secure, and especially if they're supporting a child or whatever. And college may seem too esoteric. And, you all know this better than I do. So here's the challenge. And then there's this sort of mystery about how you get from where you are into the jobs that are actually out there, especially when they require skills that you don't have. And what's happened is that the systems that are in place for these programs just hadn't been updated to help create this clarity of a pathway. So this is the terminology that is dominant in the community college system now, is career pathways, helping to create clarity for people to enter at any point along this arrow. And so the bottom area is for adults who want to return and get training and reskilled and get into new careers or advance in their work, area of work. And then the top part of the arrow is the students coming out of high school. And how do you help them connect into a pathway towards that higher level work that can sustain a family and a quality life? A lot of you are experienced with dual enrollment and various kinds of opportunities to start to connect the students to college experience in the high schools, but often that's problematic for foster youth who are being moved around, so there's even more need to help them get connected as they come out of high school. And the key term that goes along with this is what's called stackable credentials. So you can start in, let's say, a field I know a little bit about, you can start as a dental assistant, and often there's a lower level, a sort of entry-level dental assistant with a short-term certificate from a community college, and then go back and get your certificate and your AA for a dental hygienist. And you can ultimately become a dentist if that's an interest or a career you'd like to be in. So that's just one example. There are many of those in manufacturing and industry of all sorts, you know, that entry level. Now, what a lot of us did, well, I'm old enough, what a lot of us did their on-the-job training that now requires more and more post-secondary education to even get those entry-level jobs that then lead to the next promotion and the next when you get some more experience and you get some more training. Stackable credentials on a career pathway, key concept. Something a lot of people don't realize is that you can get federal financial aid for career education if it's more than a 6-month or 1 semester certificate. So if it's a program of at least 1 year, then federal financial aid is available. Complete the FAFSA. And of course, most of these students will qualify for a California Promise Grant, or what used to be called the Box C waiver. So that helps make it affordable. There's also what's called an ability to benefit program that some colleges have, and I think more will be developing these, which is a federal program that allows, excuse me, some students who need to earn a high school diploma while they earn a CE certificate. Hugely beneficial, especially in terms of financial standing. So watch out for that, ask for that at the colleges that you work with. I wanted you to have this resource. The community college system career education programs are working in regions and identifying labor market needs so that they can, again, match the curriculum and certificates to those real practical job opportunities that exist in the regions. And they do vary quite a bit, right? We all know that what happens in far northern California is very different from what happens in Los Angeles in terms of industry and jobs and workforce needs. So this map and the link here is a way to, it's interactive, so you can click into your region and get more information about the various work sectors. You can get contact information for people to talk to if you want to get more clear about what the opportunities are, where the growth is, where the future direction is going in your region, and also connect with the folks at your colleges. I want to just very quickly go through these slides to share some of the resources that are on the resource page, which we've created for you all, excuse me, that are helpful in working with students. And what we did at the workshop, if you weren't there, was everybody had a chance to sit in sort of regional groups and review, kind of surf the web, some of these sites and see what might be useful and how could you set up a training to help your counselors and your liaisons really look at how these foster youth get supported through their transition. Living wage calculator can help students get a real world check on their expectations. CCCmypath.org has a wealth of resources, and it takes some clicking through and kind of figuring out where the best things are that you want to use or what relates to your particular region. Career Ed is a nice link that has videos within these career paths that are students talking about their experience in their programs, and is really nice for students to get a feel, and that accessible to them. This is also a video library that's sort of more promotional videos, but it gives the broad perspective. You might use some of these, say, as an introduction in a training that you want to do for career education for your district staff. More tools for exploring career paths with the youth. The Salary Surfer helps show various jobs and again, sort of shows that job ladder with salaries that go with those given jobs. And their median salaries, it's obviously going to vary if you're in San Francisco or Los Angeles versus, you know, Merced. So, but it does help give a sense of where opportunities are. This just gives you a screenshot to show how you can see the various fields and what the certificate or degree is that's needed and sort of what the salaries tend to be. And again, knowing that it can vary. But there is also a way to link to, once you click on one of these certificate or you know, job areas, then you can start to see where the colleges are that offer training in that area. So I think I went into the dental hygiene field just so you can help the students navigate right directly to the program. There is an app called Here to Career. I haven't been able to explore it yet. Hopefully you will. That obviously students like things on their phones, and you might be able to find this really helpful to help them. Another site that's useful is Career Coach, and it really again helps kind of illustrate the scaffolding idea that you enter in one place, and then over the years, I think a lot of students somehow, maybe our culture has gotten so that we expect everything right away, but you know, don't realize that you know, might need to work a few years into different jobs. So maybe they want to be a film director, but they could start as a film editor with a bachelor's degree, or even earlier than that, you know, with a certificate, can get work in the field and be learning on the job while also doing and making money and getting further education. So I found this site helpful for that kind of scaffolding idea. Here it is in child, family, and social work. An idea again of some college you can work in a preschool setting, make money while you go to school, and maybe get your degree to go on and become a social worker. Many of the foster youth often state that as their initial career goal. So here's the link to the resource page, which all of these links are on, plus some more that we got from folks at the workshop. This is where we're putting all of the recording from this call, all the TA calls, other resources that you all share. There are a couple there from other counties that we put up so that you have that as a resource. So just make sure that you check out that page and go back there periodically, because I'm adding resources as we do these kinds of things. So happy surfing on these websites. So I wanted to open it up and see, does anybody have anything you want to share or any questions that you can raise for anyone, and I'll unmute you. Aren't you tired of listening to me talk? Maybe you have something you want to share. Well, I'll move along and feel free to open up at any moment. So I'm going to share some things that we got from Jenna Hamilton at Shasta College. She's the Dean of Student Services. And I asked her to come and speak about students with disabilities, because we know that there's a range of capabilities and with students that you work with. And often it's sort of, again, a mystery, or, you know, it's worth really thinking clearly about the ways to help those students transition that might be a little different. Now, I am not an expert in this field, so I'm going to point you to her presentation, which is posted on that resource page, to give much more detail than I'm going into here, partly for time as well. But I thought one thing she did that was very helpful was pointed to similarities between foster youth and students with disabilities in the K-12 system. So they both have designated professionals who are responsible for getting them to graduation or a certificate of completion. But for most, most all of those students, that coordinated support ends when they complete or leave high school. They do not have that kind of one personal support, dedicated support with a responsibility for completion in college. And often these students, in both, whether they're foster youth or students with disabilities, they'll have what she called irregular transcripts. So they've maybe taken special courses, they've got a modified curriculum, maybe they've moved schools. Of course, that's happened so much with foster youth. They're often unable to participate in ROP. With foster youth, it's often because of movement. So they're not engaged in the kinds of things that could actually help them prepare for career interests. They have less opportunities to hold jobs during high school so that they can experiment with career choices and build skills, employability skills, and they can't take advantage of college courses while in high school. Often they're not in a setup where they could take advantage of it. So she stresses a lot the importance of realizing how much some of these limitations can be imposed by our own perceptions of the students and their abilities, and always reminding folks to be aware that they may be capable of much more than the assumption often is. So it's worth noting the difference between the regulations that govern education for students with disabilities between high school and college. In high school, the IDEA Act requires that the schools ensure a free and appropriate education services and provide individual supplemental educational services and support. The use of these services is not optional. That's so important to know. But in post-secondary education, the statutes that govern what happens is that it's a civil rights law which protects the rights of individuals with disabilities. And it works to eliminate barriers, and the use of services is optional. So you see how much more the student is on their own in college, whereas in high school, there's a requirement that they be guided to completion. In college, there's simply a requirement that they eliminate barriers. What that often looks like is something as simple as an interpreter in a college class, or extra time for taking a test. That's all eliminating barriers, but there's no one standing with that youth to say, you need to do this, and now you need to do that. They really are on their own. The list of categories of disability I thought was helpful. I just wanted to highlight that. And the level of intervention or assistance or support obviously varies. Many, if not most of these, can be addressed at the college level. The more severe intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities, not. And so that would usually lead to engagement in the regional center, and the students may or may not be connected with the regional center when they're in K-12 because of the level of support that's required through K-12. So that's something to be alert to. And then the workability programs, independent living programs, these are all opportunities to help these students transition. Department of Rehabilitation, I'm sure most of you on the call know much more about these than I do. The transition partnership programs, the WIOA, various job training programs. And then I'm just going to highlight a few things about the community college, since our focus is on the post-secondary educational transition. But there are slides in Sandra's presentation that's posted on the resource page on our website that has information about each of those. So if you want to go in and look at those, there's some great helpful points and clarifications about each of those other 6 programs or support. So at the community college, it's just helpful to know that about 54% of students with disabilities were enrolled at community colleges. It is the place that they go for this transition assistance. So, and that they're more than twice as likely to have attended a two-year college at some time after leaving high school than adults in the general population, which is why there's pretty robust support for them at most of the colleges, hopefully all of them. Be aware that the name of the program, the names of the support for what they have access to may vary a lot from school to school. DSPS is common, or DSP. Sometimes it may just be called the Access Center, Disability Resource Center, and so on. So again, you know, just know that especially if you deal with more than one school, it may have a different name at each one. Remember that students do not need to use disability services, even if they were using them in high school. It's not, there's no requirement. It's just recommended and encouraged. The eligibility requirements for EOPS and the Next Up, or the KPs program, are adjusted for students using disability services. It means that they may be able to take fewer units and still be in those programs, which are extremely important programs to support students, especially with disabilities. If you can take fewer 9 units instead of 12 and get the extra tutoring support and book support and so forth, that can make the difference. They may also qualify for other resources such as CalFresh. The student has to provide the original source documentation about their disability. Now, if they have a learning disability, most of the colleges will have a specialist who can test for that. I just heard recently somebody had left a college. They didn't have anybody on staff at the time that would be able to do that. So be aware that may be an issue. But if it's a more significant disability than that, they'll have to provide that original documentation. So that's something, again, they may need help with during that transition period. And the college needs to know, you know, which of these disabilities that they're dealing with so that they can help, there's my list, really help appropriately support the student and guide the student to the right supports if it's not on the college or if it's in addition to the college. So once they're enrolled, they can take any classes they choose based on the placement levels. That's that assessment process. And that choice should be guided by a academic counselor, ideally. Now, a lot of colleges have special classes for students with disabilities, and they may focus on that remediation. But it's the student's choice about whether they take that class or those classes, right? The regular classes do not have a modified curriculum, but are obligated to provide accommodations that the college is required to provide. What that looks like from the classroom status is something like the student comes in with a document from the Disability Services Program that says they need extra time for a test, or they're deaf and they need an interpreter. And those kinds of things, those are the kinds of accommodations that will happen, but they're still required to take the same course, meet the same course objectives, and satisfy the course requirements. There are some special classes that are disability related, skills related, basic remediation, college success skills, independent living skills. That'll vary campus to campus. All of those are obviously great to take as a support and platform building structure. And then remember that often it's the short-term vocational certificates, the career ed certificates, maybe the associate degrees that are extraordinarily helpful for these students. They can be very hands-on, might be smaller classes. It might mean that there are more ways that they can interact with others and get assistance and support in that way. And then, of course, there's targeted employment programs like workability and college to career. And this is where I would just be working with the college disability program to know what all is best available for the students in your area. And just know that they also may be able to get transportation. There might be a shuttle available for students with disabilities. Generally, textbooks are not provided, but if they're in EOPS, then they would get textbooks. They need to know, and this is part of the difference between college and high school. right? High school provides the textbook. Meals are not free. That's something that they might get at high school or in school, K-12, but they won't get that at college. It just doesn't exist. So there needs to be planning and preparation for that. And priority registration is generally provided. Well, it's offered to students in EOPS. So if the student qualifies for EOPS, which is a disability, depending on their other circumstances, certainly foster youth would qualify for EOPS, so they would be granted priority registration anyway. And then just a note, many of you may already know, already have youth you've seen go to these programs. The California Conservation Corps is a way to get on the job training. Job Corps is a residence program, could be very appealing to a student who might want to get out of the area where they are and get a fresh start and have a place to live while they get job training. And then the California Indian Manpower Consortium offers employment training services to Native Americans, and the National Guard Youth Challenge Program. So those are some practical ways to help guide students beyond high school, and in particular into programs at the community colleges that will provide them real support and help them onto a better future, a more independent future, a successful future. So I would love to hear from you all. Anything about these, this information that you want to share or discuss? Because I know there are people on this call that have a lot of expertise in these areas. It'd be great to hear from you. I'm also always wanting to hear, what do you need from me, from us? What kind of information do you want on the monthly calls that we're going to do for the rest of the year? This summer, I'm trying to work on materials that might be helpful for you and setting up trainings, providing information to your district counselors and so forth. What do you need? What would be helpful? What can we do to help? It's your show. Oh, good. Have a hand at block. Great. Let me unmute you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Are you? Oh, good. Got you here. Hi. Morning.
Okay, hi. Just a quick question. I was wondering if your TA calls will continue to be on Friday throughout the rest of the summer, or if this was just kind of a different day, having it on Thursday. I didn't know, and I was wondering if you knew.
Oh, so maybe what was a little confusing. So the Friday calls were strictly FAFSA calls, and they've stopped because that was about the FAFSA challenge. And then so I was trying to sort of do both. Focus on the FAFSA challenge while that was hot, and then also do a broader, more general TA call. And that's what this call is. And I scheduled it today because I'm going to be on vacation next week, and it was originally going to, that was going to be the TA Tuesday call. But what I put out a schedule, and I'll send it out again, and probably again and again, that would kind of alternate between Tuesdays and Thursdays through the rest of the year, just because of some conferences and things I knew that would conflict with a standing Tuesday. And I thought, well, maybe it'd be good if it fluctuated a little bit for people who also might have standing meetings or something. So the next one is scheduled for Tuesday, July 24th. And I need a topic. I need to know from you all what you want help with. Did that answer your question, Laura?
Yes, it did. Thanks for the clarification.
Okay. Anybody, any preference for a topic, for information that you need, or anything you all want to discuss? We can just open the line and have a discussion. It's college and career transition related. Nobody needs anything. Do I get to go home? I'm going to unmute everybody. Well, no, I can't. For some reason, it won't unmute. Oh, well. Okay. All right, Laura, I'm going to mute you again so you don't have to worry about any background noise. Okay. Well, I'm not hearing from anyone, so we don't need to sit here and listen to each other breathe. Well, you can't hear. I can't hear you breathe. You just hear me breathe. Well, then we'll call it. We'll say, I hope this was helpful. I think it's a huge area, one that I'd love to hear more from you all about to help continue to create this sort of information flow around career education, these short-term certificates. I just hate to see kids leave high school and go get a fast food job when they could get financial aid for a year-long program and have a decent job and move into a career path. So that's the dream, and I hope you all can help share with me what you see working. You know, I'm always trying to collect best practices or successes so we can spread that around and help other people develop their version of those things. So please share with me so these students get real life opportunities. I know you're all doing that, and there's some amazing kids out there doing amazing things. So thank you for your work. By the way, I'm going to be on vacation for the next 2 weeks. Yay! Taking a long, needed break. And I wish you the best for your vacations, and see you on the next call or via email, and I hope in person soon. I hope. Take care and do well. Be well. Bye.